The idea of feeding everybody in their own cell took forever. The prison officials say we have to idea. Confinement, they go away 10 years earlier. What they're going to build is a common dining area. Didn't have a lot of room to work with. They chose this area back here. And what they decided to do, there's 3 meals per day. They decided they're going to feed the folks in prison here 700 in a shift. Now, this is a pretty small area to get 700 guys through, so that's what they did. And there's only 2 ways in, this door and this door. So at the beginning, for the first shift, a few prisoners lined up here and a few hundred here. And the lines would extend way back to the cell block area. What they would do is they would stream in here and they form 2 lines. And walk down this narrow hallway. Now, when you get 700 guys close together like this, you're going to need security close by. This is the guard hut from here. So they would walk down here. So these are the 2 main serving areas. The folks in this line will be fed by the food servers over here. The folks in this line by the food servers on the other side of the counter. Now, this opens in 1924, and this is what it looks like in the 1920s. These 2 individuals are serving the food. What's missing are the vertical standards here. Somewhere along the way, they disappeared. You can see shadows in the background of the guys coming down and being fed. There's a couple interesting things about where we're at right now. First of all, in this photograph, these 2 guys that are serving the food are actually prisoners. By this time, various prisoners who are here are working jobs in the penitentiary, whether it's back here, the hospital, the library, the laundry, and everybody's getting paid, less than $1 a day, but getting paid. The prison works out a wage tier. They determine the lowest paid jobs are going to go to the folks working right here, and they're only going to black prisoners. There's always a certain amount of racism here. The second thing is, you see these doorways here? On the other side of them are prison cells. And this area here used to be the individual exercise yards. Over here, there was 3. And the white stripe you see between these 2 doorways here, this is where the 12-foot wall would have been that would have separated this guy's yard from this guy's. After solitary confinement goes away in 1913, they tear most of them down until they don't need them anymore. Any questions so far?
Why did they think solitary was the best solution to?
We separate you all, that way your bad habits don't rub off on you, and your bad habits don't rub off on you. You're free of distraction, you're just be in that cell or reading the Bible and saying. So we're going to go here.
Yeah.
So these are smaller serving areas. This is where they would serve items like spaghetti sauce for spaghetti, hamburgers. And then this line would have gone to this dining hall, this line and this one. You can actually go in, you just can't walk down because of the barriers. There's a lot of debris in there. But if you go in, look at how long and narrow they are. Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So a few hundred would have gone over here, a few hundred over there. Yeah, I have a photograph.
Oh, wow, okay. There's a one, too.
So this is what they're going to look like when they're operational. These spaces, especially in the summer. No air conditioning. Are you guys from Philadelphia? Okay, in August in Philadelphia, there's like 95% humidity, 95 degrees. These buildings are like ovens. You jam a few hundred guys in here, and you'll notice there's only one small walkway between the tables. These guys are jammed together like sardines. Some of them don't get along with each other, not always really safe. On a more positive note, I'll show you what it looked like at Christmas time here. Christmas time here and Christianity were always a big deal. In the 1900s, every cell block had a Christmas tree in it. In the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, that center area we just left, at Christmas time, there'd be a group of prisoners in there singing Christmas carols at Christmas time. The songs were being broadcast over a local radio station in Philadelphia and the surrounding community. Christianity was pushed so much here that by the 1880s, the Jewish population in Philadelphia was concerned that the Jewish prisoners weren't being exposed to their religion, or at least enough of it. And so the 1920s, they built a synagogue here. So in terms of the food itself, we can't go back there because it's running safe and a lot of debris. Unlike most state prisons today, and this was a state prison, the food was actually prepared here. Currently in most state prisons, it's prepared by an outside contractor. They freeze it, they ship it in. The chimney there leads to a large bakery. If you look back to the left, you'll see a spear. That leads down to the roof where the kitchen was. So, and then this unit here contained, among other things, that's an old industrial dishwasher in there. So the food's prepared, they wheel it in through, on food trucks through this corridor to the respective serving areas. And almost all the food was grown in a nearby prison. When this opens in 1924, about the same time, Pennsylvania opens a new state prison about an hour from here. It's in Graterford, Pennsylvania. It's called the New Eastern State because it was built for the reason of they wanted to replace this place with that. That actually didn't happen for 50 years. But the prisons were run jointly. So the warden would be the prisoner, or the warden of both. And so Graterford, that particular prison was built in the middle of farmland. So during the summertime, a lot of the prisoners would work the farms and at harvest time harvest the crops. And then the foods were sent down here for these guys to eat. So it kept the costs really low. And I'll show you a menu from the 1940s of how these guys ate. They actually ate pretty well. 3 meals a day. This is for the week ending April 17th, 1949. So you get breakfast, dinner, and supper. Supper was the big meal of the day, the midday meal. Every day gets something different. Monday, roast beef, gravy, roast potatoes, string beans, beets, and bread. Pretty good meal. These guys actually ate better than the poor folks living in Philadelphia.
You will have different breakfast.
Yeah. You'd have a scrapple, eggs over here, is stewed fruits over here, it's stewed peaches.
As a college student, I have the same breakfast.
Okay.
All year long.
Okay.
For
Okay. But, let me ask this, the number one thing on the menu Monday morning, fried scrapple. You guys know what that is? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like Spam, but
It's kind of, it's a processed meat that you fry.
I love it.
Yeah.
I say it's best ever. My wife says it's the best ever.
Yeah.
You either like it or you hate it. It's basically pig byproduct. You can get it in almost any diner or restaurant in Philadelphia for breakfast. There's a side order with like pancakes, rice. They serve it in squares about this big, this thick. It's fried, it's spicy, but it's been really popular in Philadelphia for well over 100 years.
New York too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then not only you, but maybe the rest of you too. You've probably heard of New York City referred to as the Big Apple. My dad grew up around here during the Great Depression. He said back then they called Philadelphia the Big Scrapple. Yeah. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Yeah, totally unrelated. What is the significance of citywide? Do you know that?
Citywide?
Citywide, well, it's apparently another Philadelphia thing where it says a shot of whiskey and a PBR, a Pabst Blue Ribbon. Have you heard of that?
I know what Pabst Blue
I don't know,
Ribbon
I
is.
found that out last night. It's a specialty in Philly.
Is it
I've
like
never
beer and
heard-
horseshoes? That like just makes some beer and horseshoes?
No, it's a shot and a beer, but it's,
I've never heard it referred to as citywide,
okay,
but I've lived around here all my life.
okay. So
Maybe
somebody.
it's for the youngins,
The
the
youngins
youngins
have
have created it.
Yeah.
The youngins. Never heard of beer and orange juice.
Breakfast
Beer and tomato juice. Beer and orange juice, breakfast beer.
That's gross.
Beer and orange
University.
juice. Not beer and orange, beer and tomato juice or beer and like. Beer and
I
tomato.
don't gas.
Ooh, yeah.
It's like half hair of the dog. Beer and orange. That's all. No.
That's enough.
I probably have. I just.
We're going to the hospital after this. Or, no, there's one other place and then the hospital. They're all locked tours. Normally they're off limits, but they're running little private tours this weekend.
Was a murder, and they were side by side, or they?
After solitary confinement, well, actually, in the late 1870s, when they had to start doubling up, they would have done that. Yeah.
So you went to Canada? Yeah. You just all go in the same room.
The only people that were separated were the women. Because the youngest prisoner here was 11 years old. So they even have kids and men in the same cell blocks. Mostly separated though. So like when they would put 3 and 4 in a cell, they wouldn't put like 2 15-year-olds with 2 40-year-olds. They wouldn't do that.
I feel like that's a whole other crime that's happening.
Yeah.
In Canada now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like in our detention centers, before you get maybe to like federal.
Federal.
Yeah, before you get.
If anybody's going to join me for the Catholic chaplains tour, we're going to be around here. Otherwise, if you take a left, and we'll take you back up.
Do we have a second to grab a drink? Or are you going to start
Yeah.
right away? Okay, cool. We'll do that real quick. Anything else?
Ready for that drink?
Yes, sir. Oh, you're good, brother. I should get water. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna drink some penitentiary water.
11. Looping into 15, cell block to death row. Just one water?
Yes, sir.
$3, please. And then it'll loop you back around through here, because there's a back exit out through death row that takes you through the old exercise yards.
And we're going to finish 10 and come back.
Fantastic. Someone will be here. All right, sorry. All right. So just the green button tap and you should be good to go.
Hey, hello, you guys. Oh, here's some gift shops. I'm here for the hospital. If you're interested.
Thanks, sir.
We also have a full-size store at the end of cell block 7.
This is well safe here.
Yep.
Okay. We're going to head down this way, guys.
Sorry, I'm sick. I'm trying to open my water.
So, we're one of a few air conditioning spots to interrupt the enrollment. These 3 rooms were the Catholic chaplain's office. After the year 1900. They were actually built in the 1870s. They served as a warden's office until 1900. This is Warden Cassidy. He passes away. From the most part after that, the Catholic chaplain utilizes it. And why we bring folks down here is basically talk about a feel-good story in a place where there's not so many feel-good stories. We're going to talk about this gentleman here. His name is Lester Smith. And Lester kind of embodies what the Quakers had in mind when they founded Eastern State. That somebody with the prison could, through Christianity, turn their life around and actually grow closer to God and leave here a better person, because that's what happens to him. So, 1955, Lester is in a jail in a town called Scranton, Pennsylvania, about 3 hours north of here. He actually then has to go to court because he had been arrested prior to going to the jail there. He had been arrested for burglary charges, armed robbery charges, let's say in Philadelphia. He was convicted, sentenced to 1 to 5 years. So what they do is they transfer him from the Scranton facility to here. And when he gets here, he decides to convert to Catholicism. And he changes his whole life around. He becomes much more spiritual, much more religious. And what happens is, at that time, prisoners here had access to paint, and they would paint murals on their cell walls. These are all murals that they had painted. And one day, the Catholic chaplain at the time, Father Gallagher, was walking by Lester's cell, and he sees these murals, and he said, "Lester, you're quite an artist. How would you like to come down to my offices and paint murals?" So Lester says yes, and for the next 7 months, he comes down here. He paints about 24 murals. So what we're going to do is, we're going to look at them. Now, unfortunately, when the penitentiary closes in 1971, the roof leaked. So it did damage to many of them. But we're going to still take a look at them. We'll start in this first room. These are pretty beat up. He paints them right on the walls. What the prison does, when he completes them, they take black and white photographs of them. So this would originally look like this. The manger scene over here, that's what it was when it was completed. That's what it looked like. It's probably about a third intact. This one must have been something else. Look at all the detail here. Most of it gets washed away. Now the ones in the next room are in better shape, so we can head in there. Oh, excuse me. So the paintings on this wall here, the paintings above it, and the one over the doorway here are in the best shape. So you can see he's very talented. We know he never had an art lesson in his life. And I'm not an art expert, but it just seems like the passion he has for his newfound religion really comes out in these paintings. This one over here, though it's a Catholic image of a prisoner confessing his sins to a priest, it also symbolizes what the Quakers had in mind. That when somebody came to prison, they could pray to God, ask for forgiveness, grow closer to God, to see Jesus hovering overhead, and leave here a better person. He signs all his paintings Paul Martin. They're his two favorite saints. That's St. Martin there above the doorway. St. Martin is the first black saint for the Americas. Among other things, in the 1950s, Lester was a huge civil rights advocate. Probably not the most popular position to take back then. Violence is escalating in America. Racial violence gets even worse in the 60s. But what happens is he paints about 24 murals, takes 7 months, and they let him go. They say, we're releasing you on good behavior. But we think it's the contribution based on prison for these murals that gets him out of here. And we know he never goes back to prison again. But a quirky thing happens in his life several years later that actually comes out in the local newspaper. So over here are some additional photographs of his paintings. I remember these growing up. The old black and white Polaroids you put down, the black and white image would come out. When he leaves here, the prison officials present him a photograph of each of the paintings he did. That kind of a nice gesture. Several years later at his home, one of his children is going through a stack of photographs. And they're all these. And he says, "Dad, what is all this stuff?" He had never told his children he had been in prison. So it must have made for an awkward conversation. But one of the things about this room, this penitentiary covers about 11 acres. You're not going to find a more colorful room in the entire penitentiary than this one. Any questions? So there's two other things I want to point out. This gentleman that you're looking at here, we commemorate him here. His name is Paul Washington. He's an Episcopalian minister in Philadelphia in the 1950s and 60s. Operates his own church in Philadelphia. But why we have him here is he spends a lot of time during those decades visiting prisoners here. Basically acts as a mentor, kind of giving them some hope, kind of talking through the problems, a shoulder to cry on, and a large impact from a lot of folks here. Also, very controversial. Has everybody here heard of the Black Panthers?
Yep.
You know who they are? The Black Panthers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
You asking me?
It's no.
Oh, her?
'Cause, yeah, it's okay if you don't know. The Black Panthers were a very militant group in the 1960s. Black folks who thought the only way to attain equality with white folks was through violence. Well, the Reverend here was a huge vocal advocate for that. Very unusual for a man of his cloth to take that position, like outwardly, but he did. Last thing is this. It looks like a dungeon. This is actually the prison safe. The warden, this is built in the 1870s, has a hand in the design of it, says, I need a safe, a vault, where we keep our prison valuables. Thinking it could be stuff like the prison payroll, stuff like that. It looks pretty intimidating, because it looks like a dungeon. But it's really not. There it is. There's another one on the other side. What's in there now? These are all blueprints for the penitentiary. On the right are some files. On some left, some of the containers, I believe, had some old hardware in it, screws and nails that we use around here.
It's not the original, those are like construction blueprints after the fact, not the original blueprints.
Some of them are probably the original,
Oh, wow.
if you believe it. But most of them are going to be fairly modern. Because the most recent cell blocks here were built the newest one was built in the 1950s, the one before the 1926, they're probably in here. If you're talking about original, like cell block 1, cell block 2, it's probably about.
Yeah.
So those prisoners were there,
Go to
so.
cell block
1971.
Did the gentleman, the artist, continue art once he left here, or?
That's a beautiful right there.
That?
We're not sure what he had talked about while I was here, was opening like a home for wayward children. I'm not sure if he actually carried that through or not, but that seemed to be his goal.
But no art has appeared.
No, not that we're aware of, at least in the Philadelphia area.
And he stayed in the Philly area?
I'm not quite sure. At least I don't know that. Some of the folks that worked here for me, they know.
Yeah, like, I don't know, would you want to go by the prison, you know, be reminded of where you were the whole time?
Probably not.
No.
Okay, so we're gonna do the hospital tour in about 5 minutes.
Sweet.
So I'll leave this out.
Is it horse pizza?
So if you guys want to go up to that black apron sign, I can make a stop and I'll be back there in 5 minutes.
I love that. Look at that block we're in. It's so cool.
These? Yeah, this is the mirrors.
Three. You gonna join us in the hospital?
Oh yeah, definitely. The hospital's normally locked too?
Yep.
The hardest part's me figure out which side I parked on this whole property. I forgot which one. I didn't remember I was by a wall.
Well, it's easy to get disoriented here.
Yeah.
They can build it that way on purpose. Hey. There you go. So we just have to wait a couple more minutes, we'll get started.
So if you can go straight at the mirror on the right, I'm sorry, the right,
Does anybody have any questions about anything they've seen so far?
Is there any levels underneath, below?
There's an area that's blocked off in the back where there's 4 underground prison cells.
Okay.
And they were used in the 1900s. If you acted up here, they put you down there. No light, you can't even stand up.
No access to that?
Not anymore, no. Would you guys like to know some off-the-wall facts about this place? Sure. Anybody notice these red stains on the floor?
Yep.
Probably not what you think they are.
Kool-Aid?
1971, the prison closes. Lays empty for 20 years until they reopen as a museum. In 1985, Tina Turner rents out the space to film a music video called One of the Living, still on YouTube today. The movie, the song is used from one of the Old Man Max movies. As part of the video, she brings in pyrotechnic fireworks. Burnt those red stains on the floor, they can never wash them out. Also, this space we're standing in right now, people rent out this space to get married.
A prison sentence.
See, the first time somebody said that to me was a woman. No offense, lady. She said, Karen, you got that right because being married is like having a life sentence. And I said, you said that, not me.
Were the archways differently, a little bit bigger before, originally?
No,
What's with the brick going this way
yeah,
here?
it's just the way they had it. Yeah,
See how that extends
yeah,
out?
yeah. Okay, we're going to get started. What we're going to do is, we're going to go to the rear of the hospital. We have to go through Sunlock 11, go in through the rear entrance and work our way up. Will we head down there now?
But also, it was like space was not an occasion.
Oh, yeah. There was 100 escape attempts from here. 60 guys, man, shooting on the walls, all the tools right there.
Yeah.
1923, 6 guys go on the wall.
Going to the hospital.
Just get top occupancy. So it's like, oh, I mean, they said it would be, yeah, like 60.
open, but we're gonna first start here with the tuberculosis yard. So you're probably, most of you or all of you are probably aware how tuberculosis at one time was a big killer. Wasn't no cure until approaching the mid-1900s. Prior to that, a lot of guys that entered here who were in prison contracted tuberculosis once they got here. Over 600 prisoners here died of tuberculosis. So before they had a no cure, the medical officials here determined what they want to do is, if you have tuberculosis, to expose you to as much sunlight as possible and as much air as possible. So they would put you down in these cells here, most of them, the ones on the end. These are called solarium cells. These are the largest cells in the penitentiary. More air to breathe. Some of them even have windows over the back door to let in more sunlight. And what they would do with these guys is, you probably all have learned how for many decades here, most of the prisoners were only allowed out of their cells twice a day, half hour each. If you have tuberculosis down here, you are allowed out of your cell multiple times during the day. Much longer than half hour. You were allowed to walk around this yard on the other side of this iron gate. Sounds like a great idea. Be out in the fresh air and the sunlight. Turned out to be a lousy idea because of the way the penitentiary went about implementing it. Because they had a policy in the 1800s and early 1900s here that any time a prisoner was out of his cell, right in contact with another prisoner, he had to wear a hood over his head. And that hood had no breathing hole. So what you had was a bunch of guys walking around here with severe respiratory issues with a heavy hood on, two tiny eye holes and no breathing. You're doing them more harm than good. Prison didn't feel like that. I think part of it is that because of the lack of science with certain medical issues like this. Any questions before we go inside? So one thing, because this is a locked space during the day, the museum doesn't allow folks in and out. Once we're all inside, I have to lock the gate behind you. Okay.
Stay the night randomly. It's loud.
So, just watch your step coming in. There's an iron lip. I'd ask you to take about a minute to wander around, but if you can stay down at the end by the gates, looking at ourselves. But after a minute, we're going to meet under the second hanging electrical lamp in the ceiling. Talk about some of the stuff we're looking at.
Sorry, I just want to let you know we don't allow any of the filming on this place.
Hey, Karen.